Joining us on the line is Senator Mike Lee, elected in 2010 as Utah's 16th senator. Mike Lee has spent his career defending fundamental American liberties. He is definitely a constitutionalist, and he has a book out titled Saving Nine. Senator Lee, welcome to the program. Great to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Ben. Good to be with you.
So why don't we talk about this impending Roe decision? We're still waiting for this thing to come down. I assume that there will be some minor differences from the draft decision that already leaked from the court. Why don't we begin with the leak itself? It is unprecedented for a full draft decision to leak this way. You've heard of sort of the outcomes of decisions leaking before. That happened with Roe itself, but the actual draft decision, for that to leak into full public view, is insane.
Completely insane, completely unprecedented. I was a law clerk myself to Justice Alito, and these things don't happen. At least they never happened in the past, because this is how people respect the process of the court. The court has one chance to rule on a case, and when it issues its ruling, he wants to make sure that each of the justices know where they're going to land and which opinion they're going to join.
So let's talk for a second about the nature of the decision. The left is fighting mad over the fact that the Supreme Court is now relegating this decision back to the states. And they've engaged in this extraordinarily torturous logic whereby somehow it is a removal of individual and states' rights for the Supreme Court to actually say that people and the states can now weigh in on this issue. So the only way to preserve democracy is to allow a bunch of unelected judges with lifetime appointments to take the decision-making out of the hands of the people. That apparently is a way to preserve democracy. If they relegate the question back to the people, this apparently is some sort of infringement of democracy, is the democratic logic here.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. What they've been saying is that in order for us to preserve democracy, we need to make this fundamentally undemocratic. We need to take it away from the people's elected lawmakers and put it in the hands of the unelected and the unaccountable. And so this, coupled with the leak, demonstrates how the left is so obsessed with this issue that they're willing to delegitimize one of the most revered institutions in our system of government, an institution that, despite its flaws, warts and all, has served our country well. They want to demonize and delegitimize and ultimately isolate those justices inclined to vote for Justice Alito's opinion, which, if you've read it, it's hard to quibble with. In fact, it's a masterpiece. It's incredibly well written. They can't handle the fact that under our system of government, standing up for democracy actually means giving it back to the people's elected lawmakers.
So you have a book coming out in the next week or so, Saving Nine, the fight against the left's audacious plan to pack the Supreme Court and destroy American liberty. So let's talk about that plan, because you've seen people like Elizabeth Warren trying to use the impending Roe decision as a rationale for now packing the court. Ed Markey has made similar statements about gun laws. He basically says that in order to get rid of DC versus Heller, we need to add justices to the court. How seriously should we take the threat from the left to actually pack the court? It seems like a significant contingent of Democrats would if they could, but they can't, so they shan't. So how serious is the threat?
We should take it very seriously. And that's why I started predicting this over a year ago. And that's why I started writing Saving Nine, which, by the way, is out June 7th, but it's available now for pre-order. If you pre-order your copy today, you'll get it by publication date. I wrote Saving Nine because I started over a year ago foreseeing that the court would likely grant review in an abortion case, in what we all have come to know as the Dobbs case, and that the court quite possibly would overturn Roe versus Wade because it's garbage as far as precedent. And it's not just me who believes that, but most liberal law professors who have looked at it have said that its reasoning is flawed. I concluded also that they would start this drift toward delegitimizing the court and ultimately packing the court. So what I do in Saving Nine is I walk through the number of times this has happened in the past. The most relevant analog and the only recent analog, that is the only analog really in the last 150 plus years, has been what Franklin D. Roosevelt did in 1937. And in my book, Saving Nine, I explain why that matters. See, it failed legislatively in 1937, but I explain how that left a mark, an indelible and awful mark on the Supreme Court, one that has affected not just the judicial system, but our entire system of government, and not in a good way ever since then.
So let's talk about what the actual process would have to be in order to add justices to the Supreme Court, because I think a lot of conservatives are sort of counting on the fact that it's a difficult process to add justices to the Supreme Court to stymie this sort of challenge from the left. And the simple fact is that for the foreseeable future, it's going to be difficult, it seems like, for Democrats to garner enough of a majority in the Senate, for example, to get this thing done. But what would it actually take for the Senate to do this?
Simple legislation. That's all it takes. Doesn't require a constitutional amendment. They just have to pass simple legislation. That's why packing the Supreme Court is such a devious, diabolical, dangerous plan is because it's not actually unconstitutional. It is anti-constitutional. It is hostile to the very purpose of having a constitution because of what they're trying to do with it. It is not itself unconstitutional. And if they decided at any given moment to create an exception to the filibuster rule, that is, most legislation, nearly all of it in the Senate, and before you pass it, passing it takes a simple majority. But to bring debate to a close, it takes 60 votes. But they could use a procedure known as nuking the filibuster, in theory, to pass it with a simple majority. So if at any given moment they had a simple majority of votes willing to nuke the filibuster and do this, they could do it tomorrow. And that's what's so frightening about it.
So, Senator Lee, I mean, you're watching as the left is pushing on every front for more and more radical legislation. It seems like this battle is only going to ramp up because as the left pushes more and more radical, the Supreme Court is going to be forced to step in more and more often. And we're seeing some hints that the Supreme Court is going to make some pretty major changes to precedent, particularly when it comes to the area of administrative law. Where do you think are the flashpoints that are coming up in terms of the Supreme Court and its jurisprudence other than Roe?
Okay, so beyond Roe, I think you're going to see the Supreme Court continuing to look at, including quite likely this term, administrative law, the extent to which Congress delegates out its lawmaking authority to people in the executive branch, primarily these regulatory bodies within the executive branch who effectively promulgate law. And I think under things like the major questions doctrine, the court's going to have occasion to claw back some of that power and say, look, you can't really just enact a law that says we shall have good law and give it to a specified commission. So you'll see some action in that area. I also think under the Second Amendment, under the New York Rifle and Pistol Association case, you could see some additional fireworks this year in under the Second Amendment.
I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you stay up to date with all our future content.